Hello everybody, it's your friendly digital technology librarian, Christy here. We've reached another Friday, so of course I have another Film Rec Friday ready for everybody out there. Now, September 15th through October 15th is National Hispanic Heritage Month. So to celebrate, this week all of our recommended films all either star or center around actors of Hispanic descent. We've got a family comedy drama film that is actually based on an Eastern language film. We've got a foodie movie that is sure to keep you drooling from the first shots to the very end, as well as a documentary that focuses on one of the very few performers who's actually managed to win an EGOT. That's Emmy, Grammy, Oscar, and Tony all together. These films are incredibly entertaining. They'll keep you thinking. They will absolutely grab your attention. And as always, these films are all available for free with the use of your Milan-Berlin Library Card. And in this case, all three films are also available on both our Hoopla service and our Kanopy service. So whichever you prefer, you'll be able to find them. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and jump right into the recs. Okay, I want to kick things off with a 2001 film, Tortilla Soup. Now, Tortilla Soup is actually based on a Taiwanese film directed by Ang Lee, and this time in the story, we are, instead of focusing on a Taiwanese chef and his three daughters, we're focusing on a Mexican-American chef and his three daughters. The chef in question is played by the always incredible Hector Elizondo. If the name is kind of vaguely familiar, but you can't place him, Hector Elizondo is in so many films. You 100% will know his face. He's in The Princess Diaries. He is in Pretty Woman. I mean, he is just one of those incredibly reliable character actors who always catches your eye on screen. He just does an incredible job with whatever role he's given. And that is exactly the case within this film. So Elizondo's character, as mentioned, is the chef Martin, and Martin is this incredibly celebrated chef. However, since his wife has passed away, he seems to have lost his sense of taste. So a lot of the things that he's doing, it's all based on kind of like muscle memory. He's not able to immediately be like, this is too salty or this is too sweet. So he's really kind of riding along on luck and instinct, you know? And so we're dealing with some of the complications from that. Plus, he has these three daughters, all of whom have, you know, very rich but incredibly complicated lives. You have one daughter who is the teacher at this school, and she kind of hates her life. It's so sad, really. But she ends up developing a relationship with a fellow teacher, but there's certain things that she doesn't know are actually happening behind the scenes. You've got another daughter who is actually very much interested in food and kind of longing for the same kind of career as her father, but she wants the stability of sort of an everyday kind of 9-to-5 business-centered job. So she's sort of denying this one side of herself. Then we have the youngest daughter. I mean, it's the youngest child. They've always got tons going on. And she's got a crazy relationship going throughout the film. I mean, it's not like this film is completely treading new ground or anything, but there's something really appealing about the exploration of the bonds between the sisters and their father, between the father and other people that I don't want to talk about, just because I don't want to reveal anything, because it is those other relationships that he has within his community and the people in his life. Those are really vital to the story as well. You've actually got a couple of pretty interesting twists and turns that you don't necessarily see coming, or the only reason I saw any of it coming is because I have seen the film that this is based on. But going into it, if you've never seen Eat, Drink, Man, Woman, I think you're in for like an enjoyable surprise at certain parts. You have phenomenal acting from everyone, especially, of course, as mentioned, Elizondo, always awesome. But Elizabeth Pena, she plays the eldest sister who is the teacher who starts developing a relationship with a fellow teacher, but again, she doesn't know everything that's going on behind the scenes. She was nominated for Best Supporting Actress for her role, and you can absolutely see why. There are many kinds of roles that get awards like that. You know, there are tons of people who have like these big, like loud, raucous characters that they're playing, but characters like Pena's, you know, there's this nuance to them, there's this subtlety, and it really takes a lot of skill to make those characters feel interesting in every beat, and she absolutely does that. Pena is in a lot of really, really good roles, and I've really enjoyed it, pretty much everything I've seen her in. So I think if you watch this, you'll really, really enjoy what she does. Um, you will see some other oddly familiar faces. Like I definitely, while watching, was like, oh, I know that person. Oh, I know that person. And people who are very unexpected in this type of film. There are a couple actors who are generally known as comedic performers that cropped up. Like, and this is very funny in spots, but it's definitely more of a comedy drama than just like a pure comedy or anything. So yeah, it's very, very enjoyable. I think if you're looking for something that really digs into family relationships, especially relationships between a father and his daughters, I think you'll really love this one. So please do give it a try. Again, it's Tortilla Soup, available on both Hoopla and Kanopy. Okay, jumping right into my next recommendation, and that is 2015's East Side Sushi. East Side Sushi is a phenomenal, phenomenal movie. I'm pretty sure that I have recommended it before, but I had to recommend it again just because it's that awesome of a film. So in this particular movie, we are following single mother and fruit cart vendor Hana. She, from the get-go, we see has enormous knife skills. She's crazy fast. She's very dexterous. She knows how to do her job. Circumstances happen, and she no longer wants to be a fruit cart vendor. She wants to find something else. And so we get to see her go on the struggle to sort of find what niche she should be in. And along the way, she discovers Japanese cuisine. In particular, she discovers sushi. And, you know, she really comes to love it. She works in a sushi restaurant at first just as a dishwasher. She doesn't have any contact with the food other than, you know, the daily meal that the staff eats together. But as time goes on, she really starts to grow to appreciate and enjoy the cuisine, and she starts to desire to become a sushi chef. Now, there are lots of things that she has to come up against, namely within her particular position, a restaurant owner who 100% is very much a traditionalist. He does not believe that women can be good sushi chefs. That's a fairly common take on that, actually. And he doesn't believe that someone who is not Japanese can be particularly good at that job either. And I do find that kind of thinking fascinating because it really does beg the question, what makes a dish authentic? Especially when we're dealing with dishes that are so closely tied to cultural identity. And I'm not just talking about Japanese food and sushi. Like, when you think of sushi, you think of Japan, right? I mean, like, that's a pretty standard feeling. But when you look at sushi in the American region, it is not Japanese. Like, I mean, it really, really, if you look at like traditional Japanese sushi, they don't look anything alike. Ingredients are very different. The style of it, the way that different ingredients are prepared, very, very different. But that's what most of us as Americans see as what sushi is. Like the California roll is absolutely an American thing. But then when you look at like the deep fried rolls and all of that, that's very much an American creation that we feel is authentic sushi. And I mean, if you look at a traditional viewpoint, it's not, but I mean, it is, right? And so it really does make you question all of these things. Like, when you think about different kinds of cuisine, like pizza or, tacos or anything that's like so closely aligned with a particular culture. And you ask, like, well, who can make that and who can make it authentic? I love films like this where it really does make you ask questions. Why do you perceive things a certain way? Is that the correct way to look at things? What does it mean to have a correct viewpoint of that particular topic? I really do enjoy that. And I think this film does it in such a way that you never feel like you're being preached to by the movie. You feel for Juana. You absolutely like can get behind her fight to be a sushi chef, but at the same time, like, it still brings up a lot of questions and maybe preconceived notions that you might also have about food, about different cultural cuisine. And I think anything that makes us think in those ways, in these big, broad questions, I think is really kind of incredible art. We're talking about a movie about food. There's a little bit of romance, there's some drama, there's some comedy, and yet it still asks these really deep, quite in today's world, important questions. And I just think that's amazing. The story of how this film actually came to be is really, really interesting as well. Its origin story comes from director Anthony Lucero. He had originally been envisioning his main character as Juan, who was a restaurant dishwasher, who had this deep desire to be a French chef. But as time went on, as Lucero is writing his script, his interest kind of shifts, and it ends up becoming the story that we have in East Side Sushi. And I do think that it works even better in this situation because, one, you have two cultures that are so steeped in food, and obviously not that French cuisine doesn't have like a very vivid and obvious connection. But I do think that, like, when we think of Hispanic cuisine, we have very specific thoughts. When we think of Japanese cuisine, we have very specific vision of what that is. So like it feels almost like a bigger clash, if that makes sense. I don't know. But I do think that the changes he made over the years to the screenplay really do nothing but aid the story and make it more accessible, make it more of an everyman kind of question. So, you've got cultural questions, you've got sexism all over the place. I mean, it's just one of those movies that works on a lot of levels and that makes you think on a lot of levels. And I really, really appreciate that. So if you're looking for a film that you can absolutely just enjoy as a workplace comedy drama, kind of, as a romance, as a journey film, 100% check this one out. But if you're looking for something a little bit more, I think this will work even better for you. So again, 2015's East Side Sushi, absolute must watch. Please, please, please check it out. Okay, final recommendation for the day, and that is for 2021's documentary, Rita Moreno, Just a Girl Who Decided to Go For It. Let me tell you how much I love this documentary. It just really, really encapsulated an absolutely fascinating woman and pretty much her entire life. I mean, we get to see her early days. She talks about, immigrating to the States from Puerto Rico. She talks about her life in Puerto Rico. She has these vivid memories of looking up at the Statue of Liberty and thinking, why is this green lady holding on to an ice cream cone? I mean, it's those little pieces, as a child, you look up and you see this statue holding what we know is a torch, but yeah, you totally would recognize that as an ice cream cone. I mean, who wouldn't? And it's like those little bits and those little pieces of information, of experience that really flesh out this entire documentary. I mean, we really get to see where she was in those moments. The other thing that I love about this is that she doesn't shy away from the hard stuff. I mean, Rita Moreno is one of 17 people to win the EGOT. That's the Emmy, the Grammy, the Oscar, and the Tony. 17 people. That's not a very big pool. Um, and she came up in the entertainment world at a time when people of color were either not on screen at all, or were definitely very much pigeonholed into very specific roles. And she talks about how 100% the case for a large swaths of her career. You know, um, as mentioned, we talk about her early childhood. We talk about, growing up, how, just the culture in New York City was very different from what it was today. She talks about, you know, how she had to be careful what blocks she's going down because blocks were owned by certain gangs and certain cultures, and you just didn't walk down those streets. And we see how those situations tie in with roles she's played throughout her life. We also see how, as a woman of color, she was very much treated a very specific way behind the scenes. She talks about how when she was very young and just starting out, she was playing a generic native woman named Ula. And one of those scenes, her character ends up, I guess, falling off of a cliff. I don't know if she throws herself or what exactly happens. I've personally not seen the film that she talks about in this moment. But her character is supposed to be, lying dead, in some shallow water. And she talks about how she absolutely laid down in the water and was trying to be incredibly still. But at the time, there was some strange jellyfish phenomenon going on. And there were jellyfish stinging her. And she couldn't help but twitch because a jellyfish sting hurts. But the director didn't care. The director just told her to shut up and stay still so they could get the shot. And she talks about how for a period of time, that's just how she felt all the directors were talking to her. Shut up, do your job, do what I'm telling you. She talks about other behind the scenes circumstances where she was abused by people she should have been able to trust. She talks about how one of her later co-stars actually talks about stories she learned of her, and how for a large swath of Moreno's career, she created what she called the universal accent. They would tell Moreno, we need you to play a Hungarian woman. She would use this one universal accent. They would tell her to play this Russian woman. She would use this universal accent. They would tell her to play a Spanish woman. She would use the universal accent. Those are incredibly different countries where accent does not sound anything alike, but no one cared. At the time, no one could even tell the difference, and it wasn't an issue. And again, that is all part of Moreno's experience as a performer of color, working in that time period. And she talks about how much she really wanted to play something else, how she wanted to be taken seriously. And we see, especially through her later roles where she does get that chance, or at least more of that chance, she had the acting chops, but she just couldn't get the opportunity. And she was a working actor, so it's not like she could just walk away from it all. She had to, again, shut up, do her job. Besides the fascinating trajectory of her career, and boy, do we get into some of the nitty-gritty about working with certain directors, working with certain actors, working in certain roles, and the way that she interacted with certain actors. We also talk a lot about her personal life, which, of course, again, as a woman in those times of color trying to make it in the entertainment world, she bumped up against a lot of difficulties, and she doesn't shy away from talking about them openly. She talks about mental health, and she talks about how, it was something that she really struggled with. And, I love that she's able to do that, because the more we talk about those kinds of issues, the more we're able to hopefully move in the right direction for how to alleviate some of these problems. She talks about relationships she's had with actors, with people in her life, with family members. And she's really just very open. It feels very much like she's at the point where, there's no reason to shy away from answering certain kinds of questions that I'm sure she would not have answered at earlier points in her career. And being able to watch her do that is really, really fascinating. And it really does allow a more transparent vision of her career to come across as an audience member. And I've been a fan since I saw her in West Side Story. I remember growing up watching her in these roles and just thinking she was amazing. I mean, and again, they essentially would cast her as any ambiguously ethnic character they could think of that needed to sing or dance or be attractive. And that's the other thing. She does talk about how like characters would just be like generically ethnic and sexy, and how people would say, just how directors or agents would just tell her to be sexy, and she would just have to figure out what on earth she was really going to do with the role. We do talk about like little snippets of like different less serious moments, like when she was part of the electric company and she talks about it being one of the best times of her life. We get to hear from Morgan Freeman, who was her co-star on that children's show, and how there was just such a clear sense of joy on set, a whole bunch of adults getting to act silly like children, and it was just amazing. And it's no wonder that so many people who watched that show, like there's this huge generation that I think has an appreciation for certain things because of programming like that, because you have shows that just sort of let go and were able to be fun and entertaining, and that featured people who looked like the public at the time, I think that's really awesome that she talks about that, and that so many of her co-stars still remember that moment in time the way that she remembers it, as something fun and something creative and exciting to be a part of. So yeah, I really, really think this documentary is amazing. If you are interested in Hollywood history, because man, she lets it all hang out there, and you do hear from a lot of big players from the game back in those days. I mean, like Norman Lear, her co-star in West Side Story, George Chakiris, I want to say his last name was, who played Bernardo. Morgan Freeman, like I mentioned. You've got a ton of contemporary actors of Hispanic descent who say, amazing things about how she inspired them. They saw somebody who actually looked like them playing on TV, and being able to see yourself represented. It's a huge deal, especially those of us who grew up in eras where you didn't necessarily see people who looked like you on TV a lot. It's just a really phenomenal documentary. It's a slice of history. It's a slice of entertainment history, and it's just, I don't know, it's a really refreshing take, I think, and very much worthwhile. So again, 2021's Rita Moreno, Just a Girl Who Decided to Go For It. Check it out on Hoopla or Kanopy. Okay, so that is it for this week's episode. If you have any recommendations for films starring or centering around actors of Hispanic descent, please comment with those below. I definitely would love some recommendations from all of you. If you have any suggestions for topics or themes that you'd like to see us cover in future episodes, definitely recommend that as well. This episode has been really, really fun to put together. I really always enjoy getting to do these deep dives into our catalog. I always find incredible films. There are so many available to you if you have a Milan Library Card. Definitely check out Hoopla and Kanopy. You will absolutely find something you enjoy. As always, thank you so much for joining me this episode, and I will see you next week. Bye-bye!